private preview at the Aurora Crown was buzzing on the 42nd floor. I stood near the edge of the Sky Gallery glass walkway in my simple dark suit, watching our CEO, Victoria Hale, in an immaculate crimson dress. She turned toward me, caught my gaze, and noticed my eyes were fixed on the glass floor right between her heels. Victoria smirked, stepped closer, and murmured softly, "See something interesting?" My heart slammed against my ribs, but my voice remained steady. "Actually, yes, don't move."
Victoria froze.
I pointed down. A hairline crack was actively creeping across the glass panel beneath her feet. Every morning in our quiet suburban home began at 6:10 sharp with the sizzle of scrambled eggs, the hum of the refrigerator, and the soft clatter of Lego bricks. Sitting across the kitchen island was my 9-year-old daughter, Grace, diligently assembling a delicate toy bridge. "Dad," Grace announced, testing the span with her thumb, "my bridge bends in the middle." "That is usually preferable to snapping, sweetie," I replied, placing a plate of eggs and toast in front of her. "You're weird," she noted, taking a bite of toast. "That's engineering, Grace," I countered with a dry smirk. "Aunt Claire says you don't work as an engineer anymore," Grace said, tilting her head with sharp, curious eyes. I paused, holding my coffee mug halfway to my mouth. "Eat your breakfast, Grace." "Did you used to build glass buildings, Dad?" she persisted. "I helped," I murmured softly, taking a sip of coffee. "And then I chose a job that knew where home was." "Buildings don't move," Grace observed.
"Engineers do," he replied smoothly.
What my 9-year-old daughter didn't fully grasp was that 10 years ago, before my wife passed away and my life shifted completely, I was a licensed senior facade and structural glass engineer. I spent my days analyzing curtain walls, structural glazing, load transfer calculations, and complex glass bridges. I was even one of the principal engineers who co-authored the edge stress monitoring protocols for the famous Hudson Spire atrium. But when my wife died 4 years ago, leaving me to raise 5-year-old Grace alone, I realized a painful truth. High-stakes consulting required constant international flights, weeks spent in distant hotels, and endless nights away from my child. I stepped down from senior design engineering, took a local position as senior building systems coordinator at Meridian Arc Developments, and built a predictable, grounded life where I could walk out the door at 5 o'clock every single afternoon. I changed jobs. Glass didn't forget what I knew. Meridian Arc Developments was a premier commercial firm specializing in luxury mixed-use towers, high-end hospitality, and complex adaptive reuse. My role involved site coordination, inspecting active structural interfaces, coordinating trade contractors, and resolving discrepancies between architectural drawings and field construction. To the executive board and high-level managers, I was simply the pragmatic systems guy, the quiet employee who wore a safety vest, carried a digital tablet, and solved practical installation problems on the dusty construction floors. Our company was led by 35-year-old Victoria Hale, a brilliant, fiercely decisive chief executive officer who had earned her position through sheer strategic talent in project finance and acquisitions. Victoria was immaculate, highly controlled, and possessed a formidable reputation across the real estate industry for her razor-sharp mind. But behind her crisp executive posture lay a quiet, guarded personal life. 3 years earlier, a long-term relationship had collapsed because her ex-fiancé constantly complained that she was too ambitious and didn't need anyone. From that day on, Victoria had convinced herself that if she didn't allow anyone to get close, no one could ever disappoint her again. Our professional paths crossed directly during an early inspection for the Aurora Crown, a century-old icon being redeveloped into a luxury hotel and office complex. The project's highlight was the Sky Gallery, a soaring high-altitude glass walkway connecting 2 towers on the 42nd floor. During an early walkthrough, Chief Development Officer Marcus Vale pointed to a facade mock-up and announced, "Site coordination delayed the glass release." I stepped forward, holding my tablet. "Because the glass code on the shop drawings doesn't match the vendor certificate," I explained calmly. Marcus frowned. "Who asked you?" Victoria, who was walking beside him, turned her sharp, dark eyes onto me. "I just did." "What's the mismatch?" I explained the technical discrepancy without using unnecessary jargon. A simple variance in interlayer movement ratings that could cause premature seal failure. Victoria listened intently, verified the paperwork, and approved my hold until the vendor issued the correct certificate. As we walked back to the elevators, Victoria looked at me. "You were right, Ethan." "That sounds painful, Miss Hale," I replied dryly. A subtle, genuine smile touched Victoria's lips. "Don't get used to it." From that exact moment, she remembered my name. Following the heart-stopping moment on the 42nd floor where I pointed out the creeping hairline crack beneath Victoria's heels, the Sky Gallery preview was immediately halted. Victoria didn't panic or cause a public scene. She calmly instructed her security team to clear the gallery, cordoning off the glass bridge with discreet brass stanchions. Within 20 minutes, site safety technicians and structural specialists were on the floor with digital calipers and thermal scanners. The initial lab scan confirmed that the crack originated near a structural mounting edge. It wasn't an immediate catastrophic failure risk, but it was a severe technical anomaly that should never have occurred on a newly installed multi-layer laminated panel. Marcus Vale stood beside the technical console, adjusting his silk tie with a cool, dismissive expression. "It's a localized manufacturing defect in the outer sacrificial ply, Victoria," Marcus insisted. "It's cosmetic. We replace the single panel and proceed with the opening schedule." "Sacred sacrificial ply or not, Marcus?" I noted, stepping forward with my tablet. "A crack near the edge origin indicates localized stress concentration. Glass doesn't shear at the border unless the structural support bracket is restricting natural thermal movement." Marcus glared at me with icy annoyance. "You manage site systems coordination, Ethan. Let the development division and certified consultants handle structural glass interpretations." "I manage the physical reality on the floor, Marcus," I replied levelly. "And if the support brackets are restricting movement, replacing the glass panel without checking the bracket detail just means the next panel will crack next Tuesday." Victoria looked back and forth between Marcus's polished corporate defense and my calm demeanor. "Isolate the panel," she commanded firmly, "and pull the complete batch verification records for every bracket on the gallery." Over the next 2 weeks, my quiet investigation uncovered alarming discrepancies in the project documentation. I pulled the master closeout appendix for the Sky Gallery glazing package. A month earlier, our primary structural glass consultant had issued revision F of the bracket installation detail, a critical update that increased the thermal expansion allowance on the primary mounting pins. But when I inspected the active as built construction records, I discovered the glazing contractors had operated off revision E, an outdated drawing set that kept the brackets tightly constrained. Someone inside the development office had intentionally re-uploaded the outdated revision E set to the contractor portal to avoid a 3-week lead time delay for custom machined revision F brackets. Worse, when I reviewed the executive risk summaries Marcus had presented to Victoria, the consultant's explicit recommendation for additional batch-specific verification prior to final closeout had been edited down to routine post-installation monitoring. When I brought the document mismatch to Victoria in her private office, she sat at her mahogany desk, reviewing the file history on her screen. "Are you telling me our contractors installed high-altitude structural glass using an outdated support detail?" Victoria asked, her voice rich with cold, controlled authority. "I'm telling you the physical brackets on the gallery don't match the engineering revision F issued by our consultants," I explained, leaning against her desk. "If the temperature drops 20 degrees tonight, the thermal restraint stress across those panels will double." Marcus was called into the office 5 minutes later. He smoothly dismissed the mismatch as a routine administrative oversight, claiming that a junior document controller had accidentally attached the wrong PDF file to the contractor bundle. "It's a non-issue, Victoria," Marcus stated smoothly. "Revision F was merely a minor geometric clarification. Ethan is creating artificial delays to justify his operational relevance." Victoria looked back and forth between Marcus's defense and my steady gaze. "Hold the final glass closeout on the Sky Gallery for 48 hours, she commanded. "I want a complete technical audit of the distribution logs." Marcus's face flushed with subtle anger as he left the room. That evening, As I was packing up my tools in the quiet site office, my email inbox chimed with an official notification from Human Resources. Marcus had formally submitted an internal performance grievance against me, citing repeated, unauthorized schedule obstructions and unprofessional interference with executive project management. I looked at the screen, letting out a slow, quiet breath. I had flagged a severe structural risk, and Marcus was attempting to build a paper trail to have me terminated before I could expose his dangerous shortcuts. The following day, a scheduled staff development day forced the local elementary school to close, leaving me without childcare for 9-year-old Grace. My sister Claire was out of town, leaving me with no choice but to bring Grace to the Meridian Arc corporate headquarters for the afternoon. I set her up at a small conference table inside the building systems department, giving her a fresh sketchbook, a box of colored pencils, and a tablet. "No wandering down the executive hallways, Grace," I instructed sternly, adjusting her small blue sweater. "And if anyone asks, you are an official systems assistant." "I'm 9, Dad, not a goat," Grace replied calmly, opening her pencil case. "I know how to sit in a chair." 20 minutes later, Victoria Hale walked past the glass walls of the conference room. She stopped in her tracks, spotted Grace assembling a clear Lego bridge model, and opened the door. Grace looked up, her sharp eyes widening in immediate recognition. "You're the lady who stood on the cracked glass," my daughter announced plainly. I closed my eyes in deep, agonizing embarrassment, rubbing the bridge of my nose. "Grace, please, lower your volume." Victoria walked into the room, a genuine, radiant smile illuminating her face. "Cracked glass lady? I see my official corporate title has been updated, Ethan." "I apologize, Ms. Hale," I said with a dry grin. "Her internal filter is currently undergoing site maintenance." "I think her filter is magnificent," Victoria replied, kneeling down beside Grace's chair. "What are you building, Grace?" Grace proudly showed her Lego model. "A glass bridge," Grace explained, pointing her finger at the plastic span. "Dad says glass is very strong if you ask it to do the right thing." Victoria examined the toy with genuine interest. "And what happens if you ask it to do the wrong thing?" "It cracks," Grace answered matter-of-factly. "Like your floor did." Victoria turned her head, her dark eyes looking at me as I stood a few feet back with my hands in my pockets. "Your father says a lot of wise things," she murmured softly. "Mostly at home," Grace added cheerfully. "At work, he mostly complains about people using the wrong support brackets." I let out a choke of laughter, while Victoria's eyes sparkled with genuine amusement. Later that afternoon, the three of us ate a quiet lunch together in the executive lounge. As Grace happily devoured her sandwich, she tilted her head and looked directly at Victoria. "Do CEOs get weekends, Miss Hale?" Grace asked with unvarnished childhood curiosity. "Sometimes, Grace," Victoria smiled gently. "What do you do on weekends?" "Dad and I build models and go to science fairs," Grace explained. "Dad used to work all the time, but then he stopped." Victoria looked at me, a soft, probing question in her eyes. "Why did he stop?" "Because of me," Grace answered plainly, taking a bite of her apple. "Not because of you, Grace," I interjected gently, touching my daughter's shoulder. "For you. There's a big difference." Victoria sat back, her gaze softening as she looked at me with profound, newfound respect. She saw past my simple safety vest and tablet, realizing that my choice to step back from a high-stakes engineering career wasn't a failure of ambition. It was the ultimate expression of love and responsibility. While Grace went to wash her hands in the lounge restroom, Victoria walked over to where I was standing near the floor-to-ceiling window. "She's an extraordinary little girl, Ethan," Victoria said softly, her dark eyes filled with genuine affection. "You've done an incredible job raising her alone." "Thank you," I murmured, looking out at the city skyline. "I spend most of my time worrying that I'm making every mistake in the book." "You aren't," Victoria replied firmly, stepping closer to me. "I see the way she looks at you. You gave up an international engineering career to be present in her life, didn't you?" I looked at her in surprise. How did you know that? I read your original employment application file last night, Victoria admitted quietly. You co-authored the Hudson Spire Atrium Edge stress paper? Didn't you, Ethan? I met her gaze with a calm nod. I did. But physics doesn't care about paper titles, Victoria. It only cares about what's physically happening on the floor. She reached out, her soft hand gently touching my forearm. The simple, tender contact sent a powerful electric current through my chest. Victoria looked into my eyes, her executive armor completely gone, leaving only an authentic, unshakable human connection between us. Before either of us could speak, my phone buzzed with an urgent notification. An emergency technical assurance audit had just been convened on the executive floor regarding the Sky Gallery closeout. The corporate storm broke the following morning inside Meridian Arc's primary executive boardroom. Victoria had convened an emergency technical assurance session, inviting the board of directors, head of engineering assurance Dr. Helena Ward, chief development officer Marcus Vale, an external glass specialist, and the site systems team, represented by myself. Marcus Vale sat near the head of the mahogany table, looking confident and completely relaxed as he projected his polished presentation deck onto the main display screens. This emergency session is entirely unnecessary, Miss Hale, Marcus announced smoothly, adjusting his silk tie. A minor cosmetic surface craze occurred on a single glass panel during the preview because site operations failed to properly monitor ambient thermal conditions during the event. Victoria sat at the head of the table, her posture erect, her face a mask of absolute executive calm. We are here to review technical data integrity, Marcus, she stated coldly. Mr. Cole, please present your operational log. I stood up, adjusting my simple dark suit, and walked up to the primary display podium. I didn't present marketing graphics or vague strategic promises. I projected raw server logs, digital timestamp metadata, and side-by-side engineering drawings. At 8:45 on the night of the preview, the edge crack on Sky Gallery Panel 12B registered a stress propagation origin directly adjacent to support bracket 4 East. I began, my voice calm, steady, and carrying immense technical weight. This crack occurred because installation contractors were operating under Revision E of the support detail, a drawing set that restricted thermal expansion allowance by 3 millimeters. Marcus slammed his hand on the table, his face flushing red. This is an absurd, unverified accusation. You are a low-level site coordinator attempting to cover up your team's failure to calibrate environmental sensors. I am a site coordinator who reads raw engineering data. Marcus, I replied, pointing my stylus at the display screen. Revision F was issued by our structural glass consultants 3 weeks ago, explicitly mandating increased movement clearance at bracket 4 East. Someone inside your development office manually re-uploaded the outdated Revision E set to the contractor bundle on Tuesday, suppressing the mandatory safety clearance to avoid a lead time delay. I clicked the stylus, displaying the immutable digital audit trail verified by Dr. Helena Ward. The server logs clearly showed that the file swap had been authorized using the administrative credentials of Marcus Vale's senior project controller. The board members sat up straight, leaning forward to examine the undeniable digital evidence. Realizing his narrative was crumbling, Marcus launched an aggressive personal attack directly against Victoria and me. This entire review is completely compromised, Marcus shouted, pointing an accusing finger at us. Mr. Cole has an improper personal relationship with our CEO. They were seen flirting in her private office, and he brought his daughter onto the executive floor yesterday. He is using personal influence over Ms. Hale to sabotage my development schedule and protect his own job. A tense, breathless silence fell over the boardroom. I looked at Victoria, seeing the subtle tension in her jaw. Before she could speak, I stepped forward, taking complete control of the room. I request that Ms. Hale completely recuse herself from the final voting process regarding my employment and the Sky Gallery technical acceptance, I declared, my voice ringing clear across the silent room. If my operational findings cannot stand on raw, independent technical merit, then I should be terminated immediately. Strip the personalities away. Examine the physical physics. Marcus blinked, caught completely off guard by my immediate, unyielding demand for independent verification. The external glass specialist sitting on the technical review panel looked down at my submittal binder, his eyes widening in sudden recognition as he read my methodology notes. "Wait a minute," the specialist said, looking up over his reading glasses. "Ethan Cole? Are you the principal engineer who co-authored the 2018 Structural Glazing Edge Stress Framework published by the International Facade Institute?" I met his gaze with a calm, modest nod. "I am." The specialist looked at the board members in absolute astonishment. Ethan Cole designed the temperature compensation algorithms that half the structural glass projects in this country currently rely on. He didn't just inspect this building. He wrote the foundational literature on high-altitude glass load transfer. Marcus's mouth opened slightly, his smooth composure shattering into complete, embarrassing ruin. You're a senior structural glass engineer? Why are you working as a site coordinator in our systems department? I looked Marcus dead in the eye, my voice carrying an absolute, quiet dignity that resonated through the room. Because 4 years ago, my wife passed away, and my daughter was 5 years old, I said softly. My old high-stakes consulting career knew more airport terminals than she knew bedtime stories. I didn't stop being an engineer, Marcus. I just stopped needing strangers to call me one. And physics didn't disappear from my brain just because I stopped wearing an executive suit. Victoria sat in her chair, her dark eyes glowing with immense, quiet pride as the board members looked at me with profound, newfound respect. Dr. Helena Ward then presented the final piece of undeniable evidence, an internal memorandum created by Marcus Vale's office 2 weeks prior, predating the final verification, explicitly instructing his analysts to suppress batch-specific verification notes and present full glass clearance as the sole viable commercial outcome. Marcus Vale had not just managed a schedule. He had intentionally suppressed safety verification notes, manipulated construction drawing sets, and violated corporate safety governance to force a hasty, multi-million-dollar opening date. The board voted unanimously to immediately suspend Marcus Vale from his executive duties pending a formal corporate governance review. The final technical determination for the Sky Gallery was announced 2 weeks later by Meridian Arc's Independent Technical Committee. Recognizing that safety and schedule possessed distinct value, the board rejected Marcus Vale's hasty opening plan. Instead, they approved a comprehensive technical rectification strategy. The constrained bracket assemblies were retrofitted to Revision F specifications. The affected glass panels were replaced with fully verified batch units, and the Sky Gallery opening was rescheduled by 3 weeks. The Aurora Crown was saved, securing both the structural safety of the high-altitude walkway and the long-term commercial reputation of Meridian Arc developments. Recognizing the need for high-level technical leadership, Meridian Arc's board of directors officially established a brand new internal position, Director of Building Envelope Engineering. The role provided complete authority over structural glazing and facade safety, a significant salary increase, and a strictly structured operational schedule that guaranteed I would never have to travel internationally or miss a single dinner with my daughter. I didn't have to trade my daughter's childhood for professional excellence. My integrity and technical mastery allowed me to possess both. On a warm, sunlit Friday evening 3 weeks later, I walked into the quiet, newly rectified Sky Gallery on the 42nd floor of the Aurora Crown. Construction crews had completed the day's work, leaving the soaring space peaceful and still. Ambient amber work lights illuminated the pristine, newly verified glass panels stretching across the open sky. Standing near the center of the gallery was Victoria Hale. She wasn't wearing an intimidating corporate suit. She wore an elegant crimson dress, her hair falling softly around her shoulders. As my footsteps echoed softly against the glass floor, Victoria turned around, her dark eyes locked onto mine, a warm, radiant smile breaking across her face. She stepped close to me, looked up into my eyes, and whispered with a faint, beautiful smirk, "See something interesting?" I smiled softly, taking a step closer and looking straight into her eyes. "You," I whispered. "The first time I saw you first. The crack was just second." Victoria let out a soft, breathless laugh, tears of genuine happiness glistening in her dark eyes. "For the record, Ethan," she murmured, reaching up to gently cover my cheek with her soft hand, "I didn't approve the independent technical review to keep you in my life." "I know," I smiled, squeezing her waist gently. "You approved it because the physics was real. And because you are an extraordinary CEO. And I didn't come to this gallery tonight because I needed a glass engineer," she added, her voice rich with radiant warmth. "I came here because I found a man who looked at me without seeing my executive title or my bank account. A man who showed me what true character really means." I leaned down, pressing my lips softly against hers in a sweet, lingering kiss that sealed our promise under the warm city lights 42 floors above the world. 11 months passed like a quiet, beautifully optimized restoration. The Aurora Crown project flourished into an industry benchmark, drawing praise from structural engineers and city architects across the country. Meridian Arc Development stock value reached an all-time high, proving to the executive board that technical integrity and human care were far more profitable than cold, reckless shortcuts. My new role as Director of Building Envelope Engineering allowed me complete creative and technical freedom. I spent my mornings calibrating digital stress models in our studio and my afternoons walking active construction sites with my tablet, solving practical problems alongside the trade crews I had worked with for years. And at 5:30 every single afternoon, I walked out the front door, drove home, and sat down at the kitchen table to help Grace with her homework. Victoria's leadership approach underwent a profound, quiet transformation as well. She stopped relying solely on polished executive summaries, making regular, unannounced visits to active construction sites to speak directly with trade workers and site coordinators. She instituted a company-wide policy mandating that every technical report include raw data contexts and dissenting engineering options. On a sunlit Saturday evening, nearly a year after our first encounter, Victoria arrived at my home for our weekly family dinner. She carried a specialized architecture Lego kit for Grace and a bottle of wine for us. Grace ran to the front door, greeting Victoria with a tight, familiar hug. Over the past year, Victoria had naturally integrated into our small family circle. She didn't try to replace Grace's mother, nor did she pretend to be a flawless parent. She was simply Victoria, the brilliant, warm woman who cheered loudly at Grace's school recitals, helped her build complex Lego bridges on the living room rug, and made our home feel complete. Standing on the Sky Gallery during the public open house a week later, Grace looked down through the pristine glass floor at the city far below. "Dad?" Grace asked, looking up at me with a playful smirk. "Is this where you stared at Victoria?" "I was inspecting structural glass, Grace," I replied smoothly, holding Victoria's hand tightly in mine. Victoria threw her head back and let out a rich, delighted laugh that echoed across the high-altitude gallery. I held Victoria close as the golden sun dipped below the horizon, illuminating a future built not on artificial perfection or corporate titles, but on truth, family, and a love that was built to last forever. Have you ever allowed someone's professional title, humble work clothes, or simple lifestyle to lead you into underestimating their true value and character? Have you ever had to choose between staying safe in your comfort zone or taking a chance on a relationship that challenged everything you thought you wanted? Real integrity isn't measured by the prestige of your job title or the size of your bank account. It is revealed in how you treat people when there is absolutely nothing to gain. If the story of Ethan, Victoria, and Grace touched your heart and reminded you of the quiet power of honesty, family, and second chances, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What was a moment in your life when choosing truth over convenience changed your entire future? Never measure your worth by the expectations of others, and never be afraid to stand up for what is right. Live your life with absolute integrity. Protect those who depend on you, and never forget that real love will always build a home where you truly belong.